Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Our explorations in Season 2 take us into the depths of healing with biofeedback and awareness and the power of healing sessions to transform our well-being and our experience. With an avid interest in movement to heal the body, I approach my profession from a physical standpoint through Tai Chi and dance, along with many healing modalities that include muscle monitoring as found in Touch for Health, and energy assessment as found in Therapeutic Touch. There are many ways of knowing, and today we're going to dive into the language of light and intuition. How do we know what we know, and how is it expressed through us? Today I'm excited to share an extension of a conversation that started with my guest, Lori Hops, a few weeks back when we were introduced and booked as a session just to get to know each other a little more. It was an instant delve into many subjects about psychology, healing, intuitive knowing, and then light language. Lori Hops is a licensed psychologist and a diplomat in comprehensive energy psychology, a logosynthesis practitioner, a Reiki master, and president of ACEP, the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology. She's traveled the world sharing her expertise, and you can find her on Facebook sharing a wellness and inspiration tip each day to support your well-being. She is approaching 1,000 tips, which is an incredible feat. So please welcome Lori to the show. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
It's just delightful to be able to just continue the conversation and dive back in and embrace the topics that we got all excited about.
Yes.
Before we get started, I am an avid tea enthusiast, as I've been packaging tea like crazy. My whole kitchen is covered. So I usually like to ask my guests what tea they've prepared and if they have a special mug that they like to use or a cup. So what have you got today?
Today I have red tea, rooibos, and I like this cup. It's one I often use. When I was physically in the office, this was my office cup, and it has a nice little warmer on top. This is a nice little autumn warmer to put on top. So I don't, my body is sensitive to caffeine, so this is caffeine free. So, and what about you?
Yeah. Yep. So just finished packaging and the labels arrived this afternoon is Hugging the Holidays, brand new tea blend as we launch our Cape Breton Tea Company, which is also brand new. And I have mine in a Christmas mug. I'm trying to bring on that Christmas cheer as we go into all of the markets coming up. So cheers to you.
And to those who are participating with us.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so Lori, before we dive into our topic for today, when I got onto your Facebook page and looked at how many tips you have put up there, I've done lots of videos myself and pieces doing, especially at the start of COVID with all in a row.
Yes.
Wow, 1,000. That's a lot. So do you want to talk a little bit how you got there and what people can find on your Facebook page?
Yeah, so maybe by the time the listeners or viewers join us, it will be 1,000, but it's not quite, it's a little under. So what happened was during the pandemic, I was noticing in the first few weeks that I was needing to really anchor my energies and establish kind of a sense of sanity with all of the uncertainty and chaos going on. And I started to talk with friends and family about things I was doing. And then some people said, oh, that's a good idea. Can I write that down? Or, oh, I'm going to try that. And then I thought, well, I'm just sitting at home. Maybe I can just one time post one tip for wellness and see whether other people would like it. A public post, so you don't have to be friends on Facebook. And people wrote in and they liked it. And so I thought, well, let me try again tomorrow. And one day led to the next. And then I did some internal meditating and said, what is this about? And just as long as I was going to be under this umbrella of this experience, I was going to decide to post every day unless that changed, and it hasn't. And so now we're at 950 something, and it hasn't always been easy to
Great.
post, but I have made a commitment to do so for myself. And one time I did have to skip a day and I got some grumpy comments about it. So I see that people actually are like tuning in, so
Mhm,
to speak,
mhm.
around the world. And so this will supposedly end or have a closure at 1,000 days, which is, I think, the 2nd of January in 2023. And then at that point, I'm going to pull back and decide what to do with all this material. There's poems, there's tips for wellness. I expanded it to inspiration as well as wellness because poetry was coming in. And so that's the story. And then the picture, if you notice the picture, is of a beautiful island. I had the good fortune to spend time for a couple of years in Costa Rica and Central America. And that was one of the islands that I spent a day on, and there's a beautiful picture of the tranquil sea and
Yeah,
lovely little
yeah, beautiful.
image. Yeah,
Wow, what an
yeah,
incredible gift that you have offered to the people who've been the recipients every day. And for those that are listening or watching, to be able to go back and you can start that journey knowing that you've got a lot of tips and tools that are already there for you. So that's
yes.
incredible. Yeah,
If you go to facebook.com slash, and then it's just my name, Lori.hops. So Lori.hops. And then you can
perfect.
see the old posts or the current
Perfect.
ones. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay. When we first got together and we're having our conversations about all the things that we do, we started talking about the ways of knowing and in the work that we do and with the kinds of
Mhm.
people that we touch every day, how that intuitive knowing started to develop. And then we got into a little conversation on light language. So do you
Yeah.
want to give us a little introduction to both intuition and to light language, and we'll start the topic off?
Yes, that would be great. So for those who don't know, aren't as familiar with intuition, we'll start there. This is a natural sixth sense that everyone has. We don't often think about it, but sometimes, unless you focus. But it's an internal GPS or guidance to tell us how to proceed in our day and our life and so on. And the more you pay attention to it, the more it grows, especially if you follow the advice you were given. And it can be as quick as the instinct to go one way versus another, or to phone someone later in the day rather than earlier, or to get off the highway at this stop and not that. And we don't know what we're avoiding that's negative, but and we don't know what we're contributing to that's positive, but it's kind of like having an angel on your shoulder directing you through your life. And so most people don't pay attention to it because it is so natural, so quick, so sudden, and so seamless. But you can develop these skills and they communicate to us through our body and our senses. So, like the sense of sight or hearing, or taste or smell or touch, have physical aspects, as we all know, in the 3D reality, but they also have subtle communication. For example, imagining that cup of tea that you have. And so we use our imagination, and it may come across with the scent or the visual of the cup or the way the steam rises or the feeling when you sip it. So people are very familiar with using their imagination, but those same attributes of imagination are also overlapping directly with intuition. It's just a matter of how you're framing the information and how you want to use it. So let me stop right there and see if I kind of like threw a whole bunch of concepts in at once about intuition. So is there anything that you'd like me to clarify more about that before I kind of tag on to the light language part?
I just love how you brought in imagination, because I think sometimes people can really underestimate how much their
Yeah.
imagination can play with it, or even how they can have that forethought of what could happen. And
Hmm.
just that fleeting moment of what could is enough for them to change their direction, and then not even realizing that's intuition. They just thought, oh, I had this thought in my head,
Right.
and not identifying it. Yeah.
Or right after the fact, they say, "Oh, I knew that." Or, oh,
Yeah.
I had a feeling that this was going to happen. And it may be your gut reacts. It may be that you see something you might hear, like a voice within your own head. You might overhear conversation or song lyrics that are connected to something that's brewing inside of you. So there's so many different channels that come in, and you don't just receive, you also give out. There's a whole, there's a whole domain of practices that can be used to strengthen this. Is something that I teach online, developing intuition classes. But the other thing I wanted to say about intuition is that sometimes you know, but you don't know how or why. And so if you tie it too much to imagination, you start to second guess yourself. You think, oh, I made it up, or I can't put words to it. But because these intuitive senses are lodged within the body and more the right than left brain, we often don't have language for it. If we don't have language, then we tend to think that it's not as real. And so it's easily dismissed and or questioned. And so there's a deepening of trust that happens within the body and the right brain with intuition when you get what are called hits, which is a positive feedback. Yes, you were right, green light, go. And the more you feed that, then the more it strengthens, just like any other skill, like playing the piano or learning to play hockey or anything else. So,
Hmm.
yep.
And then I think that's where you and I had started into the conversation about the physical cues of the body, with COVID and pandemic, and switching to teaching online instead of in person, where we can.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, you might be muscle monitoring on somebody, and
Mm-hmm.
had to switch over then to a body pendulum, so the
Mm-hmm.
body swaying in a certain direction, giving you little clues. But what I've noticed from my intuitive knowing is my feet have a lot of information. And so when I stand on my feet and really pay attention to my balance and how my posture feels, that's giving me a lot of information about where I want to go next or what position I'm currently in. And
Okay.
um, and that was one that, I had some of the subtle pieces, but it wasn't until I had to help other people. I was like, how am I going to know? And then all of a sudden my feet were able to give me this dialogue,
Lovely.
which is really incredible. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's probably helpful for people who are very kinesthetic. They get a lot of conversation with their body parts, so to speak, and are very
Mm-hmm.
aware of their body signals. So not everyone is kinesthetic, but most people are. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people think, oh, I'm not intuitive because I don't see things or I don't hear things. But it's more common to feel them in the sense of body sensation. And
Mm-hmm.
so I like to encourage that kind of communication with people as well.
Exactly. I was just thinking as you said that, I had a student that was here this morning with a pain in the middle of the back. And I said,
Okay.
that pain actually might be telling you information more so than I have this pain in my back.
Yeah.
And then that led to then where is the breath? But also as we progressed through the balancing session, then that pain was gone. So again, if it comes back, what is it trying to tell you, and what is that little clue? Yeah.
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 It was like message delivered. Now I can go back to my origin.
Exactly.
Yeah, very
Exactly.
good.
All
Beautiful.
right. So do you want to move the conversation over then into a little bit of the light?
I can in a moment. I just want to add what's the why? Why would people, we talked about what is intuition, but I thought as a listener, people might think, well, why should I bother to use my intuition? And
Mm-hmm.
it can help save your life. It can help lead you to less suffering and better solutions. I like to use the term, I borrowed this from my colleague, Dr. Phil Mullen, who's an energy psychologist in England, and he's talking about this phrase, optimal process, optimal outcome. And I like to think that our intuition is sort of like a super processor that has so much more vast knowledge than our slow left logical brain. And why wouldn't you want to hook up to a personal supercomputer for yourself that knows
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everything about that you can imagine and then beyond, because it's picking up on subtle cues from other
Mm-hmm.
people, the environment, things that maybe you've forgotten that you don't fully understand. It's like having the big picture. And so if you hook into that system, you're going to be able to probably save yourself a lot of grief and lost rolling around in chaos and confusion. And so it kind of cuts to the quick and helps you with decision making. And I'll also say that it is one mode of knowing. You talked about ways of knowing. And I'm a firm believer in being very discerning, ethical, grounded, and comprehensive in my ways of knowing. And I only use intuition as one modality, but it
Mm-hmm.
is one that can add a lot to a picture with other
Mm-hmm.
forms of discernment.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about, as you were saying, when you use that intuition, then you can let go of a few things. And there's so many people who make a decision and then second guess themselves, but then they
Yes.
have their pattern that comes up for which emotion is going to come up in the monkey thought that's going to constantly go, I should have done, or I could have done, and if you start to really honor that intuition, then you can let that dialogue disappear. And also when those emotions come up of, uh, it might have been a resentment, or it might have been a fear or something like that, you can actually let yourself kind of swim through it in a flowing way, going, it's okay, my intuition is there for me, my spider sense is aware.
Yeah.
And how can I acknowledge that and understand that that's good for me. Yeah.
Yes. So that is a more advanced skill that I found in my life to differentiate between intuition, feeling, imagination, wish, rumination, and all of that. And as we bridge into this next topic of light language, we're going to go even deeper. So, what I'd like to say for people who are maybe a little bit befuddled already is that's okay. You don't need to understand all of it all at once. Maybe this is an invitation for you to start to explore with some of these things. And there's a myriad of ways to do that out in the world. There's many teachers and books and conversation and so on. But now we're going to kind of drop into even a more subtle, complicated, and maybe ambiguous discussion about light language, if that's okay with you. You're
Yep,
like,
let's
yes,
go.
good. Let's go for it. Okay. So, what is light language? Well, I had no idea. I was first introduced to this phrase, light language, about 10 years ago. I went to a conference, an esoteric conference on metaphysics and channeling and so on. And there was a presenter on stage who was said that this person was going to have a performance of light language. And I thought, okay. And this individual was a dance intuitive person and had communications with other multidimensional realms. So I was interested to see more. And what happened was kind of a performance art that was spontaneously created in the moment for a communication for that one audience. So the audience was seen as kind of a bubble or a mindset or consciousness of one. And whatever it was that we were processing in that moment, this person on the stage was communicating what we were about and maybe what we were needing next. And this was done in a multimodal way. It was done through movement, spontaneous movement, through sound. And also, she had like a whiteboard behind her, and she was drawing symbols. And these symbols were somewhat familiar to me, but not all of them. Some of them were very simple geometric shapes, like circles, lines, triangles, and such. Others were like squiggles and wheels and twisting things. Some of them looked like planets. And as she would draw, and then she would move, and she would vocalize, and then she would sit and breathe, and then there would be another wave of information. And by the end, she had this incredible mural that she had created on this whiteboard. And I didn't know what to make of all of it. I found it delightful and intriguing and beautiful, just as a piece of art, let alone communication. And I just got really curious about what is light language. So I tried to read a little bit about it later on, and I heard some different things. One of them was that this is your soul speaking in the physical form. And so everyone has their own soul signature of what they're all about, just like your fingerprint is unique to you. And so light language, light is everywhere. We are comprised of photons of light. And there is a means of communication similar to intuition, which can be communicated through our senses and our bodies. And everyone has their own patterns of how they do this. It is not necessarily a universal communication or within a certain culture like we're used to with a traditional language, but there are similarities across people in terms of how they move their bodies, the sounds that they emit, and the sorts of shapes that are drawn. I found out a little bit more that sometimes two or more people can be communicating in these light language communications simultaneously, like we're having our conversation now, with full understanding. And then maybe later they won't know what they were saying, or they might, or it may just be for self-expression and not to communicate necessarily with others. And then there's out there kind of an idea that there is a universal communication through consciousness beyond what we see and know on this planet, and that the light language may be a way of bridging communication to other dimensions, times, and places. So I leave that third option up to the listener to decide whether that fits with their worldview or not. But I got curious to bring it right down into my body. What is my light language if I have one? And can I learn to understand it or explore it? So let me just stop there. I know I gave you a lot of information once again, and see if you have any questions or comments about that before I go into my personal story.
I don't think so. I think you laid it out so beautifully, and the layers and the levels that it can go with. And I love how you brought in the communication that can happen between people,
Mm-hmm.
because that does happen a lot where you don't have to say anything and you already know the other person, how they're going to react or how they're going to be a part of a conversation.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's your partner that you spend a lot of time with. But I know for my business partner and I, we can walk into a room, not see each other for a couple of weeks, walk into the room, and we know exactly what will happen with no conversation. And it's a beautiful synergy when you allow that communication to be there. I say allow
Yes.
that because sometimes people stop it thinking I should probably vocalize because that's what you should do instead of just, going with what's there.
Yep. I have a colleague like that as well. And I don't know that we have actually met in person. I think we haven't. We've only been working together the last few years online, but sometimes we'll both look up at each other. We've been talking about a certain topic, and we'll just both at the same time go, uh-huh, yeah, okay. And then we move on. It's like there was like 5 paragraphs that were explained with those few moments, and
Yep.
there's no
Yep.
need, and then I'll later on see a note that was written about that. Yeah, okay, let's move on. And there's a whole explanation. I'm like, yes, 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 and yes. That's exactly what I meant by that. So it's a really beautiful way. What you're reminding me of, Michelle, is also the way we communicate naturally with those who are nonverbal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Animal companions, aspects of nature, um, animals, plants, and so on, the weather, um, seasons, babies, people who maybe don't speak the same language that we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many ways to communicate. And so I'm not quite sure how light language fits in with all of it, but I was very intrigued to find out more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's carry on with
Okay.
sharing your story.
Okay, so I believe it was January of this year that I set an intention. Oh no, it was the prior year. It was January of the prior year. There was some kind of a celestial big deal, like an alignment of planets and an eclipse. There was just like some like on New Year's. And so I remember staying up and drawing pictures of these geometric shapes. And I'm like, what is this? And I thought, I'm going to set my intention that I'm going to learn more about light language and what that means. And so I kept putting that on my intention list throughout the year. And a little bit came in, but not much until about a couple of months ago. Um, so what happened was I was talking with a colleague who was asking for some guidance with an unusual phenomenon that had happened on their digital, yeah, I think digital camera, or maybe that was their phone. They took a series of photos and there was an unusual difference in one of the photos. It looked like a spherical orb, a single one, quite colorful, but fuzzy too, in the pure daylight. Yes, the sun was out. Yes, it could have been an interference with the lens or something like that, but it seemed like that it was somehow shimmering and alive. So they asked if we could speak about that, and we did. And while we were talking about what this could be and what it could mean, it was in the context of a healing that was going on when the picture was taken and before. Um, I worked with this individual with a healing technology that they have, and I started to go into an altered state where I had imaginative, intuitive vision that came, and to give me more information about this orb. And it arrived like a conveyor belt with an object of a box. And we weren't quite ready to open the box. So we put the box aside, did some other work. And then it was time to bring the box out. And so the box was a simple brown paper box. And you know how a ballot, I don't know if they have this in Canada, but in the US, we have ballot boxes that have a slot in the top.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you put your paper inside the slot. And so usually that's the direction it goes from out to in. Well, in my vision, the box had a slot that emerged from inside of itself. And I could see this like slit kind of open from inside, like with an invisible hand or whatever. And a piece of paper arose out of it. And so in my mind's eye, I looked at the paper, I turned it over, and it was blank. And then I heard, it's written in invisible ink. And so, like a 1950s spy novel, I heard, get out some lemon juice, put some lemon juice on. I put some lemon juice on in my imagination and my intuition image. And then UV ultraviolet light appeared handily. And I could suddenly read that there were 6 to 8 shapes that were on this piece of paper. And the first one was easy. It was a triangle with a point up. And but it was like a portal. It was like an interdimensional transportation opportunity. So although it was physically on the paper, I could see it was shimmering with these beautiful colors and it had a dimension to it, like it was an invitation to go inside the triangle. So I thought, well, isn't that interesting? So over time, over these next several months, this started, I think, in September, August or September, and now it's November. Several of these other symbols have come to me over time. It's been a slow progression of working with them and having them come up. And so if you'd like, I can describe what these others are.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you yet is what is it all about and what does it mean and how to use it. I'm starting to use it a little bit. So maybe there could be a part 2 interview in a year or something. I can give you an update.
Everybody be waiting. But and it's interesting though, because I think sometimes people think those that are intuitive, right? It just is there. And so if they don't have intuition, then they go, well, I just don't have that. But at the same time, it is a process and it is an unveiling. And sometimes you miss cues and sometimes you have a whole lineup and you have no idea where you're going until that day when, like you said, in a year's time, you're going to be able to go, aha, now I know.
Yeah.
And
or
sometimes
now I know this part.
Now I know this part.
Yeah.
Yeah. or it
Right,
has a
right.
whole bunch of different dimensions to it. So you think it's this way, and then all of a sudden something else happens to turn it around, and it gives you a new viewpoint. And that
Completely.
also, yeah. So it's not always a done deal. The story doesn't just finish in one spot. It's always moving, and our
It's
skills
like,
are always developing with it. So for those people that maybe haven't really played with their intuition, to realize it's small baby steps, and each piece just gives you a new insight,
yeah,
and you can accept it, and that insight can be adjusted and changed. So yeah,
yeah. It's not static. It's like a living document.
yeah,
It
yeah.
changes need depending upon, it changes form and function depending upon need, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about some of the shapes.
Okay, so the triangle, which everyone has their own associations about that, the Trinity, transformation, catalyst, try whatever. So anyway, that was the first one. Don't fully know what that's about, but it is interesting. The catalyst is something that changes other things, but mostly keeps itself stable. So that was an interesting way to start. The next one was the trident. So this is, imagine a U shape with a line coming down the middle. And at the ends of the U shape are sometimes triangle points. And so this is the trident, or the staff of Poseidon, also known as Neptune, the god of the sea. And so I did a whole bunch of research on that. And I thought, now here's this try again, the trident and the triangle. So there's something about the three. And then I was also noticing the shape. Sometimes it's a V shape with the line, sometimes it's a U shape with the line. But I thought, well, this is kind of like a representation to me of the feminine and the masculine, the round shape and then the straight. So with an intersecting, and what the power is of that trident. So that was the second one.
Mhm.
The third one was a process. And that process, and I'm thinking if I'm skipping one, but the third one that's coming to mind right now is a process. And that was an image that I had of being in the center of, imagine a vase where there's a neck, kind of like you have up on your shelf. You have two
Mhm.
vases.
Mhm.
And so imagine yourself in the middle of the neck, and pouring in from all sides, 360, is all of this light energy pouring in like waterfall of light all around you. And it's coming in and cascading and not touching you. You can look up and see it all. And then it kind of drifts down and below, kind of into the bowl of the vase.
Mhm.
And so that was the next one that came in. And what happened was, as the light was coming in, it would transform the sides of the vase.
Mhm.
So I saw it as yellow, and then when it hit the sides of the vase, there were little orange flecks and spins and all this beautiful movement coming in. So it was a transformational aspect. I don't know what that was, but that was what came in next. The next part was physical for me, and I think it was a clearing. I felt it, something open to the back, kind of like that envelope that opened in the box, opened in
Mhm.
the back of my head, and I felt energy coming into my body like a cleansing. And about 2 weeks later, I was working with someone else online, and the energy was incredibly strong. And all of a sudden, I felt this fluttering energy come out of my waist, on either side of my waist, matched pair of fluttering something. They sort of felt like wings. And I didn't know what that was either. So I spent some more time, another uh, meditation opportunity, to ask, what is this one? And then I saw or felt those same very fast fluttering phenomenon pop out of joints, knees, ankles, and the bottom of my feet. And I thought, okay, it's probably not wings, because it is so many different places in the body. And then I went back to the first person that I met with that started this whole journey. And that person had done some work with electromagnetic frequencies and the biofield, or the aura. The
Mhm.
emanations of the health of the body was being tracked by a device. And the measurement came out with an outline of a human form on a piece of paper. And then the information, the data was created as an overlay on that template of a person to show where the different electromagnetic flows were happening, where was it constricted, where was it expanding. And I've seen those before, and they're usually cloudy, soft, colorful images. This one was spiky like flames. And I said, oh my God, those are the wings. That's what I felt and saw in my body. So when that happened, the next image came in. And that's where I am today. And this just happened a few days ago. And it is an image of a column of energy that's very thin and very, very strong. And as it presses itself up into being from the earth, potentially up into the body, a tiny bud of a flower of 1,000 petals starts to unwind right to left spin, opening faster and faster. And as it opens, the momentum presses the energy from below to shoot up to the next stage. And like a conveyor belt, straight line, these flowers keep opening, opening, opening. So I will pause there and say, I'm combining these last two images into a breathing exercise, which I would love, if we have time, I'd love to share with you here.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And I'm interested because you said 1,000, and I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? So as you're approaching that 1,000,
Oh, the
um,
1,000 days.
and I was like, wow. Now, what information has been gathering for you in that space
Wow.
and combining with those pieces? Yeah. Mm. Okay, I'm leaving you with
Thank
a thought.
you. Oh, I love that. Because I just thought you were going to say the 1,000 petaled lotus, which is enlightenment above the crown, but it's not exactly lotus flower, but it's something like that. I don't know what it is yet.
Yeah,
But thank you for that with 1,000.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. So this is an
yeah.
infinite system of energy that you can use as you're breathing in and out. And then I like using that vase with the light coming in from
Mm-hmm.
above. So you can do a breath exercise where you're using both of these dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one example
Mm-hmm.
of an application for light language. So let me just
Mm-hmm.
stop there now that I've shared this little packet.
Wow. So as you were describing that light coming in on the vase, and I was thinking about the toroidal tube, which is that
Mhm.
surrounding energy that goes around us and then comes in exactly kind of like that,
Yep.
except that it's wide,
Yep.
whereas the vase is that narrow piece, but you do have the different dimensions of that. And I was thinking about our card deck, our
Hmm.
affirmations for the body and the biofield. And the one, and it comes up a lot for me. It has to do with the spaces in the body and how the joints function and creating enough space for transformation to happen. Because sometimes we're just so tight with everything that we're doing, we're all locked up. And when we
Yep.
let that space come into the joint, so it felt like that as you were describing it. And that particular photograph that we have there is a dark circle in the center with yellow, and it's like somebody's peeled back to try to open a present or something. Is kind of what it does. And that one just gives that feeling of remembrance of what open freedom is like, just for those of us who get too busy every day and kind of lock into things. So those were the two things that kind of came up as you were talking. So
Beautiful. And was that, did you share that card in the recent forum summit that you were in?
yes, it ends up in a lot of my PowerPoint
Yep.
presentations because it's so powerful. And I
Yep.
have one coming up next week. It's in there too. So
When I
yeah.
saw that presentation, which was how I met you, so to speak,
Mhm.
when you held that card, I could feel it through my whole body. And I was already having resonance with yellow at that point. And so I bought your decks because of that card. So it's so nice to know. I mean, because it was what drew me to learn
Mhm.
more, and therefore I bought the decks, which I
Mhm.
enjoy so much, and I'm using them for myself and with others. So
Mm.
anyway, I don't know how we're doing on time, but is it appropriate
Yeah,
to lead a breathing exercise?
I think that would be lovely. And I think for our listeners, it's a great way for them to realize we can talk about this information, but it's a whole different piece when you can relax and experience. So, yes,
Yes.
please.
Okay. So just start off, hopefully, if you are not in a situation where if you relax, you'll be in unsafe space. So that means if you're driving or something else, operating machinery, you'll take a pause and not do this right now because we don't want anyone to have difficulty. So assuming that you're in a safe space to relax, just take a breath. Inhale and exhale, and just let everything go. We're going to focus on your breathing. And just know as I describe this process, you are fully in control. This is your choice to participate or not, and you can modify anything as you see fit for you. So use your best judgment. Okay, and so now, if you have a practice of grounding, you can use that. If you don't, just follow along. And just maybe tap your feet if you can, straighten your spine, take a deep breath. If you're sitting cross-legged, maybe wiggle your toes around a little bit and rock while you're seated in a comfortable way so that you're just connected to the ground that you're on. And you can even imagine that there's a huge cushion or something else of comfort for you that is supporting your weight in a very loving and gentle way that keeps you just where you need to be. So everything in your body sits right. And take a breath again. And we're going to start by breathing up from the feet. Now, if you can't feel or imagine this, that's okay. Just follow my voice. And we're going to have the breath come up from the feet through the bottoms of the legs into the pelvic area and stopping briefly at the stomach with that inhale. And then we're going to exhale with shooting the air up from the stomach through the body like a straight line or a column all the way up through the top of the head like a blowhole, like on a dolphin or a whale. And then we're going to reverse that and bring the in-breath from the top of the head down into the body, stopping at the stomach briefly, and then pushing it down into the earth. So let's just start with that breathing pattern first, and then we'll layer on the images. So get ready and exhale first. And inhale slowly through your feet up from the earth, through the legs, the pelvis, and stop at the stomach briefly, and then get ready to shoot it out the top of the head as you exhale. And pause. And now we're going to inhale. Imagine this beautiful energy coming in to support your being from the heavens and above through the top of your head. Inhale through your head, chest, and stop at the stomach and get ready to pop it out with a breath of exhale through the bottom of your body, through your feet into the earth. And it can go down as far as it needs to. And so we're going to have this two-way communication of up and down, up and down. And don't worry if your breath doesn't coordinate with my instruction. If you need to breathe faster or slower, that's perfectly fine. But now I'm going to lay on the next layer of imagery. And so this time, as you're breathing in, imagine that column of potential budded flowers with 1,000 petals. And as you're inhaling, each flower is opening right to left spin counterclockwise and pushing the energy up, up, up as each bud opens above its neighbor, up and out through your head. And we'll try that again with inhale and exhale with those beautiful columns of energy running up from the earth. And when you're ready, we're going to reverse that and have your inhale come from above. That beautiful yellow light, or whatever it is that's appropriate for you, as if you're standing or seated in the neck of the vase, as all this lovely energy pours in around you, and you breathe it in to the stomach and then send it down into the earth below you through the ball of the vase, the bowl. And when you're ready, you can repeat that as many times as you'd like, inhaling that beautiful yellow light. And maybe it's mixing with you with different colors as it comes around and down through your body, bringing in renewed energy and information, getting rid of any debris or anything that no longer serves you, sending it into the earth as nourishment for the earth. And at this point, you may have your own images, thoughts, feelings, reactions, sounds, movement that comes to you as your own expression of language through light. And if not, that's okay. Just keep breathing. And if you'd like, before we stop, you can pause and offer some gratitude for this experience, for being here and now, for all those that brought us together to connect with this information, from all those who will come yet to be supporting us on our journey. And when you're ready, come back into the here and now, alert, calm, focused, and ready for the next part of your moment. Yeah. And people might want to pause or take some time and write or reflect or draw or add this to a dream intention or let it sit in the back and percolate for a bit so that you can kind of take it and make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then as a podcaster to be ready to, bring something delightful to the rest of the conversation as I'm like, yep, just let me float off somewhere now.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Lovely. So I think we're going to have to do a part 2 so we can find out where these images and this information is going and how everything transforms. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I would love that. And I'd also be happy to communicate with the listeners or the viewers.
Mm-hmm.
So is it all right if I share contact
Yes,
information? So people
please.
can find me at my website at www.drlorihops.com. And that's DR as in Dr. Lori Hops, 1P, 1S, .com. And there's a link to my email address, which if you go to my website, you'll find. And I'd be happy to communicate through email with people if they have any questions or want to explore further. Because this is all new to me and I'm learning alongside others as we kind of play with this and see where it leads us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. That's excellent. So people do have a way that they can continue. And as they link in with you too on Facebook, that gives them another opportunity.
Yeah.
And if it's, those daily tips and tools, then that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lori, thank you so much for another delightful conversation and a glimpse into the world that you play in. And I'm so appreciative of what you've been able to bring to the conversation on the podcast, but also to open for other people to start really thinking about their intuition and what has it been telling them and what has their body been saying? What are their senses trying to convey? And I know we'll continue this conversation further.
Thank you so much. Thank you for creating the platform so that we can all share together.
Beautiful. Okay, if you have enjoyed listening to today's episode, consider leaving a comment or an idea if you found us on the YouTube channel, which is Michelle Greenwell. It's now at Michelle Greenwell because they have a handle for that. Or share your thoughts on Facebook. You can find me at The Key to Health with Energy Medicine. And the podcast, I always post there, so you can find it, as well as on my own Facebook page. We also thank you for sharing the podcast with those in your web of influence who may be interested in our conversation and others that have been in the podcast series. Before we go, I always like to share a little something about movement, just to get people the opportunity to ignite their passion for living with vitality. Lori, do you have a recommendation from your 1,000 tips, something movement-wise?
I love, it's very simple, and it's something that Donna Eden and others in Eden Energy Medicine teach. It's the figure eights. So I was just listening to a talk yesterday on the Shift Network to Tanya Dolan, Donna Eden's daughter, was talking about the age that we're in right now of indigo and how it's about the oppositions of the polarities of the figure eight, the edges, and how it looks like we're so far apart, but as we come together, we cross in the middle. And so I love that figure eight, it weaving the energy and the auric field together. And I think she talks about figure eights and fairy flows of having the tiny little movements. So that's one that I really enjoy. Yes.
I do that a lot too, even if I am at my Tai Chi class. Sometimes as we're kind of talking and kind of getting into what are we going to do in the space tonight, and I'll be moving myself through those figure eight patterns before I step up to, okay, now let's do the patterning of Tai Chi, which does make figure eights too. So thank you for that image. And it's funny because what I had picked to share today was also from the YouTube channel. The Tai Chi Wellness playlist is the seated foot exercises, which you are doing work in isolation, but if you actually start to realize where those feet are going, they do create figure eights with them. So inviting people to just think about that. And instead of doing it at the speed I did it in the recording, which is more like an exercise, to actually slow it down and really, as you move your foot through the action, start to notice where else in the body the movement patterns are appearing. And it usually comes in through that lower back, through the hip, and that's that figure eight piece. So being able to notice how that is shifting parts of the body. And very often for people with the tight lower back, that'll all just suddenly soften and disappear. So I invite them to play around with that. So that's the Tai Chi Wellness playlist. And that would be the foot exercises. There's 3 different patterns, but it would be foot exercise A is the one that I typically use, but any one of them would be fine. So please leave a comment if you do one of the exercises. Share anything about your posture, your breathing, your mobility, something that might help someone else to notice something different and help them start to develop a little bit of language for their body. So Lori, thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye, You've been listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. It's all good. Season 2, Episode 5, Exploring Intuition and Light Language with Dr. Lori Hops. Thank you for listening and sharing.